Welcome everyone to a new episode of DT Vector, the podcast where we explore the people, technologies, financing, and ideas that are shaping the future of the build world. I'm Eugen Ursu, your host, and today I'm joined by James Pellatt, that is currently a partner at Digital Twin and formerly head of innovation at GPE, one of the London's most respected developers. James has spent his career exploring how data and technology can make the built environment more intelligent and efficient, of course. He describes himself as a pragmatic optimist, and from what I know till now, he's very passionate about what he's doing. And another fun fact is that Anthony Slumbers, our previous DT Vector guest, recommended James, calling him one of the best people to go deep with an digital twins and real estate innovation. So today we'll do exactly that. Welcome, James, to DT Vector.
Thank you very much for having me, and very kind words for you to say. I'm looking forward to being here.
Okay, I'm looking forward to our discussions because I'm very curious, and I know you had a fascinating journey. So you started, and correct me if I'm wrong, from surveyor, you were a project manager, you lead the innovation at GPE, and now you're advising global clients at Digital Twin.
Right, yeah.
What been the common thread throughout your career?
I would guess the common thread throughout my career is I'm relentlessly curious. I've always wanted to. I hate repeating mistakes. I hate the way that we do the same thing over and over again. It's, that definition of insanity. I think, and so I'm, as I said, I'm a pragmatic optimist. So I always believe that there is a better way to do something. I think it's the better way to do something with people, because real estate really is a people-driven business. So it is a people-first perspective. But I think that the sort of the frustrations, or when real estate gets things wrong, it gets things wrong often by blaming somebody else. The first reaction is to say, well, who can I blame for this thing going wrong? Or this didn't work, it was their fault. And I don't know that enough people in real estate are that good that they're not free of blame themselves. There's always somebody somewhere that's sort of contributed towards that outcome. And when it works, and it works really well, it's great. But when it doesn't, it's kind of miserable. And so I just feel that the lack of transparency around what's actually happening, as opposed to someone's opinion of what's happening, that sort of led to my curiosity about data. And whilst obviously there's damn lies and statistics, you can make something the way you want to do. I think it is more, it's that curiosity about data and the interest in people that I think is the really exciting opportunity.
I think you previously said that real estate sounds cool, but can be surprisingly inefficient.
Oh, it's remarkably inefficient. Yeah, it is.
So
probably one of the most inefficient.
If you can explain what frustrates you the most out of that.
So I think we're at this really funny paradox in that we have more information than we've ever had, but we have less time to think about it than we ever did. Over the past month, I've had a number of conversations with people, very experienced people, similar vintage to myself, people that I really looked up to in the industry. And we would sort of just talk about communication. We had fax machines when I started working, but we would dictate a letter. We wouldn't type it. We'd dictate it. Someone would type it for us, and then we'd edit it, and then we'd send it. And that simple piece of reflection tried to make sure that whatever you put in that communication was very powerful and very thoughtful. And that action alone sort of is lost, because you feel like you've got to respond quickly to somebody by email, so you try and respond quickly. You're not necessarily thinking through something. We used to think through different options of design, and we might come up with lots of different opportunities, but we'd always we'd filter and we'd funnel and we get down to a point and we'd think on those points. We used to tended to have more face-to-face communication, which tended to mean that it felt like there was more time to think than we've had before. And now, because the economy generally in the Western world, generally speaking, is pretty flat, stagnant, or even declining, the hurdles to make things work, or to get started with a project, or get started with a development, or to get started with a lease are they're much more driven by spreadsheets and numbers than they are. And I'm not saying that you still need to make things profitable, but what we're losing is the ability to not just come up with some very bland, mundane things and say, oh, it doesn't work. Then instead of thinking, well, how could we make it work? What is it that's getting in our way that we could remove? And I think that's why I've always been curious about technology. It's not technology for the sake of technology, but it's more technology for the sake of trying to give us bandwidth to have the communication. And to get back to, I suppose, I don't mean a golden age, but it's an earlier time in which we did think or talk more. And so, and I find this is the interesting thing about AI, right? So every conversation you have about AI is either, generally speaking, because we live in a rage economy, that rage gets attention. So AI is either going to save us or it's going to kill us. And it's nothing in between, the subtlety of what's happening in between it. And so that's really unhelpful in lots of ways about trying to get people to adopt, again, this other technology, which can help take away the mundane and the time we spend processing information instead of actually thinking about what to do with the information. And that's really that's the opportunity that I start with my clients and the difference that we make and trying to help people come to grips with this period of time, which we'll look back on and think this was really, a different age, and this was a really the emerging of a new period of time or a new period of technology that was going to change what we do.
When researching about your background, I've seen that in 2018, you returned to MIT to study again.
Yes.
What drove to that decision?
So it was
if it's related to technology or
it was related to technology. It was related to the perception, my frustrations in real estate. But just thinking, well, these other industries seem to be digitizing or embracing things better than real estate does. And I was curious to see what could I learn from other sectors. What have they done? And one of those things was looking at the car industry, the automotive industry. There was a lot of talk at the time that if we built homes or buildings and factories, that we could build quicker and more efficiently. So the process was thinking, well, how can we get to build something cheaper and more efficient? And so I went to visit, along with another contractor and another developer. We visited Jaguar Land Rover in Coventry for the day. And by visiting the factory, it really sort of brought home to me that it was better than what we do, but it wasn't perfect. But so it made me think, well, look, the car industry has been disrupted because you're going to have to move away from a petrol engine into an electric engine. And so all of the norms that you sort of had before, you've got to start to think through a different process and end up in a different way. And of course, you have a major disruptor like Elon Musk gathering a lot of attention, building a new product that seems exciting, fresh, and keep promising a lot more that it would come with more and more features and activity. It was trying to find that similar moment in real estate. And that's what pushed me to go to MIT, because I figured if I learn stuff from a real estate, that, certainly with Anthony, and he's a great voice in the industry and a great supporter, you can only go so far. It did look a lot, a lot of my internal real estate learning was looking more towards the United States, because they were more willing to adopt technology in what they did than Europe was. So I did look overseas, but and as part of just thought, well, is the birthplace of machine learning. It's the birthplace of a lot of innovation, and so I picked that. And I studied digital transformation first, and then I studied artificial intelligence after that.
That's great. And at one point after that, you've started Digital Trees.
Yeah.
That's right. Why and what's the mission behind the company?
So it was partly coming from MIT. So there are lots of times in my past, especially when I was delivery of development, there would be a technology bin, and I was crazy excited about it and thought, yeah, this is going to be fantastic. This is going to transform everything. And there was a push by the UK government in 2011 to mandate the use of BIM in development. And that's when I took on the role as head of projects at Great Port in the States. So I thought, great, that we're going to use this. This is what we're going to do. And I think it was the first time that I came to realize just because I'm excited about it doesn't mean to say that my team are going to be either. And so, and I guess what I learned from that point is that you need a great deal of, you need to embrace the skepticism. You need to search for the resistance, because you don't necessarily need enthusiasts to try and make things happen. You need healthily skeptical people, because they become your biggest evangelists to make something happen. And, I kept believing, I was overexcited about technology, but I was often getting frustrated that I couldn't persuade my colleagues to use it. And what I'm going to MIT, standing back and really looking at how the process, what you realize is actually you need to start off with your problems, and you need to frame something as a problem to then you can find the solutions. And too often people are offering solutions, they're not looking at the problem. So having done all that, I managed to persuade, I was, through the great support of my CEO at the time, Toby. He wasn't telling me we've got to be the most innovative company, but he was always open to ideas, provided there was a good enough case to do so. And that was really helpful to have, because you need to frame a logical argument. What I learned was that actually, if you set the strategy, you then take people on the journey with you, that you're more likely to get adoption. And Great Port in the States is a brilliant business, but it is a London-based focused real estate investment trust. It likes being like a market cap of between 2.5 and 5 billion, depending on the market. It never wants to be a FTSE 100. That's its business plan. And having built a data layer, having connected the finance system, having developed smart buildings that could feed into the system, I kind of hadn't cracked it all, but I'd taken it as far as I could really take it. And it was time for someone else to take that mantle forward. So Toby and I agreed amicably to part ways. And we then, so having, this passion and this fire, I felt that it was my mission to help boards of real estate companies come to grips with this technology and to help them adopt it. So, in this confusing world with the CEOs getting pressured to use some AI to digitize their business, to look for efficiencies, whatever way you're coming at this point, I can give some clarity and some independence and some reassurance about what is the best way to navigate this landscape. But it's rooted in that problem first solution, and it's rooted in what is your business plan? So what is it that you want to do as a company? And what is it that you're looking to do over the next 3 to 5 years? And then I will align the technology to help you get to that point. And so we've been going for 15 months now. And we literally worked from the smallest startups to the world's largest investment. And we were advising everybody in between. And that's really been encouraging to get to help them navigate what to do with these different tools.
And you have a lot of history in real estate, but how the opportunities come to you right now? How is that happening?
So it comes to me in a variety of ways, partly through an existing network of people that I've worked with in the past, partly from existing clients referring me to new clients, and then partly just through word of mouth and people curious about what to do and know they want to do something with AI and believe that I can do it. So the Crown Estate, we've just finished writing a strategy for their urban business. That came from somebody that used to work within that business, but that, we've spent a long time working with them to understand their problem statements and their pain points, and now giving them a pathway for the next 5 years to really move forwards and optimize the urban real estate business.
And how do you approach from that point when a client has an idea, wants to do something, wants to use AI, to turn that into a long-term strategy or medium-term strategy for their business?
So I think it's whichever your business is. I think there's what we're really coming to the conclusion is that there's a 2-speed approach to this transformation. It used to be a 1-speed approach, but now it's 2-speed. And whatever you do in real estate, whether you're a cleaner of a building or you're a cost consultant or you're an architect or you're a property developer or you're a real estate asset manager, your position in the real estate world is you have something unique to your business that is insight and data specifically that you own. And you should be doing whatever you can to organize that data and access it centrally so that everybody's working from the same information at the same time, and that you're building up a series of structured data that will in time then also be used for prediction, machine learning, and building. But to do that takes somewhere between 2 to 3 years to going from beginning to delivering that thing. And then you probably need another 2 to 3 years on top of that to get enough data to be able to start predicting and see where you get to. So it's very hard as a CEO or anybody to say, I've got to wait 6 years before I get anything to get any output. But now, because the reasoning models are so good, and you have a series of service as a software vendors, young people who've worked in the real estate industry, that they've partnered with somebody who's well-versed in AI or LLMs. So you're starting to get sector-specific solutions that are starting to shuttle that information. So it's trying to, so what we do is advise on what you build for the long term, what you're going to funnel your data and your IP for in the long term. But we combine that with training or scouring the market to say, we think you should use these people will help you solve this problem that you're facing. Let's do some sprints, let's do some training, let's get you through the point about how to adopt and how to use what you're using. And then to be able to show you within 3 to 6 months that the ROI on what it is you've been testing is working. Because I think there's one consistent thing that we find throughout real estate is that as the market's got worse, as sadly following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, inflation and costs have gone up enormously, that the old inefficiencies that had crept along when we had a low interest rate environment are suddenly really exposed. So the inefficiencies that we built into the process are really exposed. And in every business that we speak to, generally speaking, people are spending at least 1, if not 2 days a week collating information and providing a report to somebody else about whatever it is their role that they're doing. And that can be on sustainability data, it can be on energy data, it can be on performance data, it can be on costs, it can be on a program, it can be on investment or buying and selling, whatever it is. And we are wasting and getting dragged in this bureaucracy that we've created for ourselves. And obviously that can now start to be sorted and automated. So you get a double win. You're giving yourself more bandwidth within the business and whatever it is that you're trying to do, which is where we get back to what the business problem is. What is it you're really trying to get to? What are the real outcomes that you're trying to get towards, with some clarity that gives real estate leadership some comfort that this is solving the specific issues that business is facing. So we try and, that's the pragmatic optimism, that we know that we can deliver benefits, but it is practical. It isn't a binary, this will kill you, or it will take your job, or it will make your job so amazingly good that we'll be 10 times better than we were before. Somewhere in between is going to be true. And that's really where we try to go.
And usually, what are the first conversations about? Strategy, pilots, use cases?
For us, it is, what are your biggest problems? That's we will try and turn that point again. What literally is the biggest problem that you're facing, or what are the problems you're facing? And often there is a disconnect between what a leadership perceives their problems to be and what their staff think the problems are. They're not necessarily aligned, or because your lived experience is based on what you hear. And so we often get, well, we don't hear people complaining, so well, you haven't necessarily asked. And so we like to test the water. We like to engage through a series of either workshops, quick workshops, or some quantitative surveys to give us some degree of measurement of what the sentiment is. And so that's how we're so confident we know how much time people are spending reporting. We also know what their attitudes towards AI are and openness to change. And often the openness to change is not as people in real estate like to say it is about themselves. Lots of people say, oh, real estate never changes. We're slow, we're dinosaurs. They'll never change. And clearly the track record is not great. Right? We are the last sector to digitize. We are the last really as to what all this opportunity could give us. And then the reason for that is really simple. It's not that, because I think about it a lot, it's not that people don't necessarily want to change, it's that they don't necessarily see the benefit, because the thing that drives the market is not the inefficiencies that we're creating. The market factors are still, how much is someone going to pay to occupy the space? Doesn't matter if it's student housing, healthcare, offices, retail, whatever it is, it's rent that's being paid. And that market force tracks probably changes on a month by month basis. It's certainly not on a day by day basis. And what's the yield that an investor's going to pay me for that product? Those two factors are quite slow moving. And so therefore you don't necessarily, the need to digitize in the same way that car industry would, or a retailer or online retailer, or all of the other sectors that are digitized, or banking. The reason they did is because they could see a return, or they could measure output, or measure productivity, or inventory, or whatever it is that you were trying to get to. Real estate hasn't had to do that until now, because there are more turnover-based rents, there are more turnover-based leases. And so you're now in a world where you are directly in the hands, the success of your customers. Therefore, you do need to start to get to the same metrics that they're facing in order to improve. So it's slowly changing. And I think there's a slow acknowledgement that something has to happen in there is something in this AI thing that is just to look at. So I'm sorry to sound vague about it. People approach this in different ways. That they want to be agentic developers, or they just think there must be a better system out there for monitoring what we're doing, and why can't we use that system? Which system? Where do we start? Because I don't know where to begin. And the truth is, there isn't really a suite of software that suits real estate. There are a few like key players, particularly around the accounting functions, but there isn't one overriding Microsoft or Google for real estate, where you're not somewhere where you buy a bundle of software. And so it doesn't matter if you're in property development, property management, whatever it is, there's not one killer app or tool. And so it's a complicated landscape about what to know where to begin, what to prioritize, and what to.
And before we're going to talk about more about that. What do you think are some signs that a company is ready for a digital transformation, and what are the red flags that tell
Because
you that they might not be?
because I think that people have come to realize that I think the frustration with the market is sort of leading to frustration with the process or the job. And it's not, you're either so busy that you're trying to get something done, or now you can't get the thing that you want done because you're having to do a lot more bureaucracy than you had to do before. And that creep is really, it's been very slow. It's like literally holding out a glass of water and your arms slowly, you don't necessarily notice it happening. So it is literally this gradual erosion of what's being done. I don't think the evidence we have so far is not that this isn't entirely generational. A lot of people say, well, if you're younger, you're more likely to want to do it. You've grown up with technology. Let's face it, people don't get into real estate because they like technology. They don't. There's still lots of people who grow up not they're fully immersed in using an interface with a phone, but they're not necessarily technology lovers. They they know the platforms and how to consume it, but they're not necessarily absolute natives or know what to do. It's just this lazy perception that young people therefore must be more open to that point. I think they can spot the inefficiency more greatly. That really young people want to know about their job and they want to be good at their job. They're not. It's not that they're more open to using technology, and certainly there are very experienced people who are very open to technology and trying lots of different things, but they don't always make it happen. It's more the landscape is so confusing about what to do, what to prioritize, and where to be.
And how should someone start? I had a conversation this week with someone. Okay, there are a lot of softwares for designing phase, for build, for a common data environment. You have the accounting, ACG platforms, a lot of noise from my perspective in the PropTech environment and so on. And okay, you're working in real estate, you're seeing all this noise market, and they all platforms are great. How, and a lot of sales guy coming to you maybe and saying that how should someone navigate through that? Wants to adopt something maybe in his own pace or the business pace. How should real estate business should approach this noise and to look out in the market to understand what is better for their business?
Absolutely define what your problem is that you're trying to solve before you start, and try and involve as many stakeholders as you can in that process. If you think about the way that the real estate, even real estate education, there's not there are degrees in real estate, but even in the degree of real estate, there are so many roles in the life cycle. It's like the easiest way I describe it to people is if you imagine when you go to watch a movie, you look at the credits at the end of the movie, and if you would look at a building, if you think about everybody that's worked in that building, the list of credits would be massive too, and there'd be all sorts of roles and titles. There'd be a lawyer, there would be, all of the different roles are in that thing. And because you see a product, you think it's been a smooth process to get to that point. I mean, clearly that doesn't happen every day, and movies go over the budget as much as anything else. So the key thing must be is to even start with the problem and start with as many stakeholders as you can, because what solves an issue for one person is not necessarily the same thing that solves an issue for somebody else. And so someone says, I want to use solution X. Solution X is the best thing since sliced bread, and this is what I'm going to do. And it might be for that role. But really, what you're what you should be looking at as an outcome, what is the X plus Y? So what is the Z? What is the thing that's going to happen? And are two people going to get to that point to solve what we want to do? I'll give you a really good example as a byproduct of this. We when I was working at Great Portland Estates, you can see I really pushed the use of BIM models through the construction. They paid for themselves. They were fantastic. Worked out really well. Then we learned to connect it to the building infrastructure, and so we could create a digital twin. of the building. We could connect it to a workplace app. So we were ending up with this connected technology that had gone through a development into operation. And my instinct was that a digital twin would be a good thing. And this is a good example of me pushing a solution to my colleagues, but they weren't necessarily keen on that solution, or just weren't sure about it. If I looked at it the other way around, so what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And so the problem statement related to most buildings now is, how do I improve customer satisfaction in my buildings whilst maintaining or optimizing for sustainable operations? And those things are conflicted, right? So customers might want to be warmer, colder, act more densely, that consumes more energy. And so if that's the problem statement that you're trying to face, what's the solution to try and get to that point? And the solution, probably at that point, is that there is a digital twin, or the subversion of that point. Even that solution, even that description, doesn't take into account that the person maintaining the building is not the same person that's building the building. So if you think about all the different stakeholders that you have along the way, how do you transfer the knowledge from the people that built the building or designed the building and what it should be to the people that look after it? I would say, well, look, here's a series of documents, read the documents, maintain the building. Doesn't really work. Here's a series of data about how the building performs, but I can't access that portal. I'm not going to get it. I can't be trained to do that because I haven't got time to, I use this system, not that system. So the subtleties become more notable. So how do you customer satisfaction and implement sustainable operations for the long term by a variety of stakeholders? Then you're starting to get to the point. And when we were doing this, I knew that AI, I knew what AI was, I knew what data was going to be. I didn't know what an LLM was going to be. But now that when you sort of combine all of that stuff in the sandbox environment, that is now incredibly powerful to do. And to access a means of secure accessing historic data through a trusted portal, that's the really exciting piece of opportunity. So the technology sort of finally caught up to the real estate inefficiency to help us solve and find those things. And that's the point. But I'm using that as an example. So yeah, you can let's use LLM based digital twins, and I'm going to tell them to use that solution. But I'm not necessarily going to sell that way because people don't know this problem. Whereas instead of saying, what is the biggest problem that we're facing? It's this. Do we agree that it's okay? Let's find in the market where we can get to that point. And you might find 2 or 3 vendors that could do that point. Great. Because then it's down to cost, training, all sorts of market factors that are really getting to that point. But before that point, it's actually, this person can look at optimizing the building engineering. This person can look at optimizing the documentation in the building. This person can look at cleaning software. This person looks at, and you end all of a sudden, you've got 13 different pieces of software that don't speak to each other, that are disconnected. And especially if you don't understand structured data, you're not saving that somewhere. You end up with lots of frustration because the facilities manager will say, I want to use this thing and I'm using that thing because that thing's rubbish. And the building contractors go, well, I'm using this thing. I don't care about that thing because this does what it needs to meet. And so everybody's doing their point-to-point solution. And it goes back to how we're educated. Because if you're educated as an architect or as a project manager or as a facilities manager or lawyer, you've all got your different specialisms and you've got hundreds of point-to-point solutions. So you choose your point-to-point solution and you end up with a load of fragmentation. And people that come into the industry from outside of it, especially from a technology background, go, how are you lot operating? There's no common layer. There's no open source layer, which is really helping me pull this fragmented stuff together. And that's without looking at it from a product mindset or a process mindset. And so all of those things are really what's held us back all of these years. And Anthony, I love him to bits, but he's deliberately provocative about how slow people are to adopt, which is great. And he's a great voice for the industry. but it's not always helpful to really think that through. And the question comes, like, I don't think there's going to be an Elon Musk of real estate. It might be. It may come in the data center world, but I don't think there's really going to be one. So the question is then, how do we streamline our thoughts and our activity to get to that efficiency? Because without it, either your business is going to get more and more mired in the inefficiency of bureaucracy, or you're not going to get your IP together in such a state that you can genuinely start to optimize performance and productivity for your output by thinking through your IP and getting really good at what it is you're doing.
And that open standards and interoperability, what the role that those two things should play in creating a digital twin strategy for a real estate business?
Well, it's easy to say yes, there should be. But I think the truth is that I think because I come from a property development background, I know what has to go into a building to be able to make it connect and to make it work. And the protocols in which the building management system is talking between different products, the possible number of combinations that a building can use for air conditioning, fan coil units, boilers, pumps, valves is endless. It must be in the billions of all the different products in the market. So to say that there must be this common layer that this is where you must get to is wrong. But to say as a property developer or property owner is to say we would like to be able to receive structured APIs from this building or from the access control system. You can still use 4 different access control systems, or you can still use 4 different lighting control systems or 4 different heating control systems, but they must all give us this structured data in this format that we are able to store and save ourselves. And that's the subtlety I think that you've got to get to, because without that point, it's not that you say you want a single operating layer, but it's the same ones. Structured data from that. And once you get that structured data, then
there are a lot of real estate professionals in the industry that are asking how much it's cost or should invest to develop a digital twin. And of course, what's the ROI developing that?
Yeah, so I think if you're there is an awful lot of nonsense that I don't know if you've heard this expression, snake oil. So there's a lot of snake oil sold about this stuff, right? Which is this. And I hear budgets and costs of smart buildings going up into £500,000, £1 million more. So we can't afford it. Let's stop. And that's because they're not looking at it truly from a product perspective. You're over engineering what it is you expect this smart building to do. So you will make the blinds go up and down. You will make the ability to order food from a cafe. You've got this super app that's trying to do everything, or a building that's trying to do too much that the customer actually doesn't want. It's not as though the customer's saying, I must have all of these facilities in my building to make this thing happen, because they just want to occupy it in a different way. So it's much easier to keep things very simple, to get 5 basic pieces of information that I think literally costs somewhere between £10,000 to £50,000 to connect, to get to. We'll say that and to get to that point, really, to what's the ROI in that thing? Well, you have to save 5% of your energy bill per year for the next 2 years. Then you pay for yourself. That you've got to it. It's because the scale of what the ROI is for this digital twin that seems like it's going to be fantastic, that is over-engineered, that nobody ever uses. You're not really thinking of it from a product-first mindset, and so the confusion is palpable. I'll give you another example. I was at a conference in New York in October, and the speaker was from James Lang, and it was primarily aimed at real estate occupiers. So these are large enterprise businesses who happen to have real estate. These are real estate first businesses. It's run by Philip Ross and his team at PropTech, great business. And the host started off by saying, it's 2025. And if I thought that the biggest thing that's holding back workplace optimization is that we don't have enough sensors in our buildings, I wouldn't have believed it myself. We're still massively underutilized by the number of sensors we have in our buildings. And these are in very large businesses, multi-million pound enterprise businesses that aren't even necessarily counting how many people they have. Because everyone should, IoT will do this stuff. And the truth is that really what you're trying to get to is an amalgamation of things that you'll be collecting anyway. There might not be one thing, but might be a series of things which are generally giving you trends. And it's the trend data which is more important than it is absolute accuracy as to what people can go. So if I said to you, the workplace utilization in London is now at 52%, you can interpret that in lots of different ways. Think, oh God, the buildings are half empty. That's terrible. The office is dead. People are never going to get back to the office. But if I said to you that workplace utilization in 2018 was 49%, then you think, oh, hang on, they weren't half empty before the pandemic. So why are they not? And the truth is they're not, because everyone is either out of the office at meetings or on holiday or doing lots of different things. It's that longer term trend, which is the more important trend. It isn't the day-to-day trend or who's at work this day or that day. And so the reason why I'm trying to say that point is that you have to look at what are the sources of data that I can get? What are the wins that I can get to? Is it good enough for me to store, number one? And is it then good enough for me to analyze, number two? And if those two things are yes, then great. And if you do need that extra thing that just gives me that touch more accuracy, then to spend £5,000 in sensors is suddenly worth it. But when you're suddenly saying we need to spend £25,000 in sensors, why? How do I know? What are you saving? And nobody's going to sign off that expenditure, particularly now. And so it's quite hard to put forward the business cases for these things. And it's sort of, you've got to be agile and nimble and take what you can take what's available for you at the point. So are you moving into a new building? If I'm a real estate occupier and I'm taking a banking facility in Manhattan Beach in Los Angeles, in a retail unit, you're going to take the lease, you can take the rent, but should it be policy that we are using this means of access control or this means of cooling? Yes, because actually what I want to understand, I'll see, is that unit making us lots of revenue? Yeah, good. And that would be your metric. But is it costing us more revenue to get to that point of sale for the customer? And is there a better way to do that point? Then you need to sort of work out those metrics, but you only ever do that with the data that you're going to get to that point. And I think this is the thing that we're all trying to get towards, right? It's whatever data you can take, store it. The storing bit is into the facility, then start to analyze it once you get to it. And the great thing is that all of these things have become much cheaper and much better than they ever did before. And every day the reasoning models are getting easier to help retrieve that stuff. So the barriers to entry are being reduced all the time.
Looking forward, do you see AI and digital twins that are merging into self-learning, self-optimizing assets? And if yes, what are the main barriers that are preventing large-scale adoption?
I'm going to say the key point in the question you asked was about self-optimization and self-learning. And I think I'm quite pessimistic about that. I think that is 10 to 15 years. But do I think you could make a smart building that you can interface with and learn how to best maintain it or best to have an effect on things that need to be fixed through a natural language prompting model? Yes. Very, very, not very easily, but quite easily. And could you, I like to say, I don't just make smart buildings, I make smart portfolios. So could you do that, and could you connect that information? Yes, you can. I think that the future will be more still human related, but still more prompt based, or we will get used to saying my energy my energy budget for this year is £25,000. Can you tell me where I am in expending the energy that we've consumed so far this year? Are we on track to come underneath that budget, or are we likely to go over? And what are the things that prevent me getting used to the way that you learn to prompt a ChatGPT or a Claude? You would get used to prompting that thing about the building, and in a way that not only could the building engineer ask that question, but the portfolio manager can also ask that question, or the receptionist, or the chief executive of the company. It is just literally building the wrappers in which to put that stuff. And that I think is the great prize, because, I think let's look at government buildings. The government buildings should absolutely be embracing that stuff, because in the UK, the National Health Service and NHS Trust doesn't even know all of the property that it's got, let alone reduce the cost of that operation and optimizing its use. Gathering that information in a secure sandbox environment is going to be the prize for each one of those businesses, because that literally is taking a part of the O&M data together with the performance of how the boiler's working. So you could see that, for example, the boiler runtime has been running at 50% efficiency for 12 months. LLM's going to also read the operating manual and say the boiler is designed to run at 40% efficiency for 3 months of the year. After that, this needs to be changed. And so you could suddenly say, well, we can see that there is a mismatch here. You should investigate the boiler. So somebody's still going to then go and look at the boiler. The this is why I'm skeptical about the self-optimization, because the self-optimization would be the boiler would shut down. I'm not working and everybody in the building's freezing. And somebody said, well, the AI is rubbish, it's touching the boiler off. But it's only because it's following a rules-based approach to say this is what you get to. So I'm quite skeptical about the self-optimization point. But it's something that's going to report on itself or give you suggestions about where it could be optimized. That's possible today. It's just getting organized to get to that point.
So you see AI or a digital twin as a partner.
Yeah, I see it as a partner in everybody's role in which I'm sure there are going to be jobs that will probably likely be removed or reduced, but generally speaking, it should be thought of as a thought partner. It is something that can give you extra perspectives that you wouldn't necessarily look at, that you get used to looking at or understanding. Equally, like it's one of the more useful things about it is to put the persona in of the person you're trying to persuade. And here's my report. Now, if I'm a cynical real estate executive, tell me how you're going to disagree with my report or my board paper or whatever that thing is, to get better prepared for that thing. Because it's then at that point where you think, well, if I'm better prepared for this meeting, I'm going to get what I want out of that meeting. And that may sound manipulative, but that's one of the better uses of AI, because it's trying to persuade and get to where you want to be. And persuasion is kind of everything in real estate, because you're rather selling someone to be in that space, they want to be in that space. So not all AI is going to save us time. That takes more time to prepare for that meeting, but the outcome should be better. It should save us more time in the long run.
What kind of leadership mindset is required to make a digital transformation to stick, not as a project, but as a culture?
You need to employ an open-minded someone who's experienced in digital transformation in real estate as your starting point. You employ me, and that will get you going. But that's like deep facetious answer. But no, I think you need. The irony is that digital transformation takes quite a while to do and to do success. It's a lot of people in real estate expect something to be rapid, but if you ask them a house, they know that it's going to take 4 months to build the house and probably 3 months to design it and 2 months to sell it, because you see the process is a physical process that you see. because you don't see the digital process, it's very hard to trust and see where you need to get to. So I think you've got to have a healthy degree of skepticism. You've got to be rigorous in being very clear in the outputs that you want. And you've got to be also encouraging to make sure that the people that you're engaged with are also trying to find that solution. But having done that, then I think you can deliver amazing results. And that's the change, and that's the difference.
For a big real estate company, whatever it means, when it will be too late to have a digital twin strategy?
What I used to say is that I think the difference is now is that I'm seeing enough momentum that, you've had the early adopters. So the early adopters have moved. The fast followers are gaining momentum. And if you're a laggard, you are really missing out. You're going to lose your competitive edge. And I think that the wait and see approach will hurt you badly. You are going to miss out, and you are going to get slower. I know there are enough people that we're working with that started to do stuff that you are going to fall behind. And if you're a chief executive of a company that is not even beginning to do this, then your role as a chief executive, which is to look at a time horizon of 3 years and to look around corners at the things that are going to get you. If you're not looking at this will bite you.
Looking ahead, what are you personally most excited to explore next on your entrepreneurial story with digital trees and in this digital transformation of the industry?
Is to continue working with open-minded, knowledge-based, growth-first clients to help them transform this industry so that we are in the bandwidth that we can create to deliver better product for the environment, for the planet, for people, and for the product. And I genuinely think that that's available. I think it doesn't matter if we're looking at how to optimize the development process, how can we shorten the process? How can we make construction more efficient? How can we make building operations more efficient? All of those things are achievable. So I think it is the opportunities are almost endless. And look, we're going to face in the next year, we're going to face increasing noise about an AI bubble, and the market probably is overvalued. But I think what people have to accept, it is almost 3 years now to the day that ChatGPT was publicly launched, and it's got 800 million daily users, which is still a small proportion of the population, right? It's not massive. But even if the models don't develop any quicker and the bubble bursts and OpenAI go out of business because they're so extended, and even if it was you were using Copilot today in Microsoft, because Microsoft would be the natural successor of what happened in OpenAI, you can still do more today if the models don't advance. Assuming the models can advance, then who knows where things get to. Sadly, the economy is not going to pick up anytime soon to drive massive growth in real estate that we've enjoyed a decade ago. So where else is the growth going to come from? And the growth only comes from greater efficiency. And that efficiency is like shortening the process or the cost or the ability to build houses or whatever it is we need to do. That's the only way that you're going to get out at this point until the economy does recover again, and which it will do. But it's not going to do that quickly. It's not going to do it. And next year the market picks up. It's going to take 4 to 5 years. It's probably this time now is equating to the start of my career, which is about the early 90s, which was a very bleak time for into real estate. The economy was very flat, and it probably took 3 or 4 years after that point for the economy to start really growing again in the UK, certainly. So make the most of it, right? Edson Seller said, "You overtake more cars in the rain." So this is the time to get prepared to outmaneuver your competition, so that when the market does come back, you're able to do a lot of stuff and get on with things. So that's what I would say. That's what I'm excited.
That's great, and it was quite a good or very good conversation. But before we end it, I have, let's say, I'm asking about some personal reflection. If you could give a piece of advice to your younger self when you started, what that advice would be?
Understand the money. Understand where the money is made in real estate and target that first of all, because that's tends to be where you have most influence and therefore you can make most change.
The money. You said you're curious, you're learning a lot, but who do you follow, read, listen that consistently challenges your thinking in this space where maybe...
So Anthony, obviously, real estate space. I follow, and then most of what I then follow is outside of real estate. If I'm honest, I really like Mazar. I like Scott Galloway. I like, and broader, generally more macroeconomic, like what's happening in the macro economy more than anything else. So it's because that's really going to shape the microeconomy more than anything else.
And finally, if you could recommend one future guest for our podcast, besides Anthony, of course, who would it be and why?
The person that springs to mind is, well, there's a couple actually. Am I allowed to?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
It's the way
So I would recommend Andy Doyle at Grosvenor. Andy leads strategy and innovation. He's done an amazing job at the cultural shift within that organization to embrace innovation, to also invest in technology. So they're not only are they adopting and using technology, they're investing in it as well and making some exciting investments every day. So Andy Doyle at Grosvenor would be one, and then Aruj Chader at the Crown Estate. Although excitingly for Aruj, she's just about to leave for maternity leave, so she probably won't be around for until latter part of next year. So that's why I go to. So Aruj and Andy would be my two that I would go to.
A big thank you, James, for sharing your insights and your stories. I hope they will go over the internet, at least over the YouTube and LinkedIn, where you're really the professional from the industry. So thank you.
No problem at all.
One more time for being here, and let's hope we'll talk in a few years of other good stories from this digital transformation.
Fantastic.
Until next time, I'm Eugen Ursu. This is the Vector, the platform that is connecting the dots of the built world. Bye-bye. Until next time.